My guest right now is the light at the end of the tunnel. He is the Penguins' new president of hockey operations. He is Kyle Dubas. Kyle, thanks for taking the time. First off, in the end, what convinced you to take the job here? Give me one or two big reasons.
I think, Mark, in the end, the reason that our family decided that moving to Pittsburgh and jumping in with not only the ownership of the Penguins, coaches, staff, and the people on the ground there was simply the way that the owners committed and talked to the way that they want the short-term and long-term handled for the franchise. And I just thought there was a great synergy there on that front. And then the second part, to me, was just the interactions and the feel that we had in the city when we visited with the staff of the team that showed us around, and just the way that it generally felt for myself and my wife and our two young kids. And it's closer to my wife's family than a lot of the other places that we could consider, both now and in the future, and just decided that the synergy at the ownership level and the way that we felt in the city were the two key things, and thus we decided last week to jump in and go forward with the Penguins.
I perceive you as analytics-based, but not necessarily handcuffed by analytics. Is that a fair assessment? It seems like there's a bit of mix and match.
I would say that I would slightly disagree with the base being analytics. My background growing up in the game was first in scouting and then in development, and I just found that as we got further into it, both in Sault Ste. Marie and in Toronto, that data and objective information or analytics could just improve the decisions that you made in the organization in all of those different realms. And I feel that we're going to make lots of mistakes, but anytime you have the chance to improve the decision-making process and limit those mistakes, you're better off. And I think that's where data or analytics certainly can play a massive role for every organization. And I think it can have an impact on every realm of the organization, not just player personnel, and systems and coaching, but high performance, player development, and so forth.
Now, your teams have traditionally relied on speed and skill, and the coach here, Mike Sullivan, he feels that way too. But do these Penguins have sufficient speed? Because it's not necessarily easy to add, is it?
Well, I think if you're just adding pure speed, Mark, you're probably foregoing some other areas, and so you're trying to find in totality, if a player is very fast and very skilled and very smart, he's one of the better players in the league. And the team in Pittsburgh certainly has a winning tradition because they've had a lot of guys like that. And now with where we're at, I think it's getting a read from Coach Sullivan with regards to how he sees it, and then for me how I see the group, and two of us will work together to build that out. In the end, what is a prototypical Pittsburgh Penguin, and how do we want to play, and who are the types of players we need to fill that gap? Obviously, as players age, I think one of the things that does begin to go is speed. But I think with the group in Pittsburgh in particular, they're all extraordinarily smart players, and that tends to overcome any drop off in speed. But yes, certainly as we head into the draft and then free agency, as trade talks and then players become available, we want players that are really smart, really competitive, really fast, but that also can execute the way that we want to try to support this group and give it another run here.
How much input will you have on the way the team plays, Kyle, or does the coach have autonomy once you provide the players?
I think the way that I've always viewed it, Mark, I understand why that's always a topic, and who controls what. I always have felt that the best run teams, with regards to the style of play and the communication in terms of the types of players they're going to need to fill that, are best when it's a partnership between the two. Obviously, in the end, I have to make the decisions, and that's my responsibility to ownership. But I think if you're going to have both success in the short and long run, if you have a coach that's just told this is how it has to be, or a coach who's pushing back against everything that the manager wants, those are the organizations where I think you tend to see trouble. And so to me, everything that we do, Mike and I will have a good discussion, long discussion about it, as long as it takes to figure out how we want to move ahead. In the end, I'll have to make the decisions on the types of players that we have. If we want to make system changes, that'll be a robust discussion between the two of us because it may impact the roster. But I think the best run organizations are the ones where the manager and the coach are always in constant communication, pushing, challenging one another, and constantly evaluating the way that they play and evaluating the system and ensuring that there's the right personnel in place to execute it.
I really liked your take on goaltending at your introductory press briefing, Kyle. It's so tough to predict and project, let alone pay. Given that, the decision with your goaltending, that has to be maybe the toughest one that you got to make.
Well, absolutely, because you only have to not have quality goaltending to realize how important that it is, and then when you're trying to search and find it, you realize how hard it is to find, especially the point that you made, Mark, in terms of the consistency, and I think a lot of things play into consistency of goaltenders. There's just a general variance sometimes year to year. There's injuries, there's usage, there's a number of different factors, and I think the first step here with us is, from my perspective anyway, meeting with all of the people on the ground that have had experience with the goaltenders in the organization, getting their view on them, and getting their view on their strengths, weaknesses, potential areas that they can improve on, et cetera. And then because of the situation you mentioned with Tristan being an unrestricted free agent, we need to very quickly shift to having discussions with his people. And then, as I said there on Thursday, likely a discussion between he and I in terms of what's important for him and as he makes his own decision as well, because then on that one he has a say because he's earned the right to free agency. So goaltending, it's vitally important. You see the teams that are in the finals now, they've received excellent goaltending on their runs and their wins, and we I think need to stock up the organization as deeply as we can with quality goaltenders, not just at the NHL level, but below, and then start to fill the pipeline with some prospects that can push for NHL time. And hopefully, I'm talking way in the distant future, the next time that these kind of eras come and go, whether it's Tristan Jarry or a young player who's not even eligible for the draft yet, we've got a guy in the net in Pittsburgh that can be counted on to carry the load through the season and through the playoffs.
How vigorous are the days and weeks ahead, the immediacy? Because it seems like you have more decisions to make quickly than perhaps some in your position.
Well, they're going to be long days and weeks ahead, Mark, but I think that's one of the exciting parts of this work is that it's exciting for me. It's a new challenge. It is a challenge. I think that goes without saying. I come into this eyes wide open. I think there's a lot of extremely positive parts of the organization, the roster, the players, the leadership, the coaching staff. We've got a lot to fill out on the management side, a lot of the systems that we need to build out and build a collaborative organization in, and all while that is ahead of us, we've got the draft. The draft combine's going on now in Buffalo, followed by pro scouting meetings, followed by the draft itself, and then free agency right away in the player development camp. So the short term from my end will be extremely focused on the draft and free agency, and then once we get to that early portion of July, we'll start to try to build out the organization in terms of the management side, personnel, and different systems that we want to put in place. But it's going to be a busy stretch here through the summer, but we're very excited about it and think it's a great opportunity.
You talked on Thursday about winning now and rebuilding for later simultaneously, which is a tall order. Is it maybe a matter of one of those directions kind of revealing itself as more realistic early in your tenure, or can both be done?
Well, the intention, Mark, right away is to, and the intention right away is to surround the group that exists and that is signed, and it's not to say that we're beholden to any of the players on the roster. If there are ways that we can improve that part of it, we're going to do that. The focus is going to be on using the cap space that we have and the various assets that are there to try to give the team as good a chance it can next season to contend and win. And I would say that holds true in the short term. If we get into the year and our intentions are not being met, I always think, especially in a hard cap league, you have to always be willing to adapt and do so quickly. But I fully believe that this group here is it's got a lot to prove. There's a lot of doubt around it, and I think that the team, of course, missed the playoffs. The doubt comes with that, but I think that it's a very proud group with strong leadership, and if we can bolster it in the off season here, given the assets and cap space and various other elements that we have, that we can give it a go. All that said, we need to, at the same time, when we talk, I don't know that rebuild is the right way. I think it's build out and continue to build out and supplement the player personnel department, the development department, the high performance department, all other areas of the organization, so that as the players who have made up the basis of a great run here in Pittsburgh continue to get a little bit older and closer to the end of their great careers, that there isn't a large gap for the fans of Pittsburgh and Penguins fans in regards to competitiveness and contending. So I agree. It's when you say it, it can sound and look daunting, but I don't. I've got a lot of confidence that we'll be able to give our best go at limiting the amount of years that are painful for the fans here in the middle term.
Well, I feel like last year's team didn't perform up to its talent level, but then again, Kyle, I feel like the team's kind of gone stale. Like the same, not the same core, because those three guys are beyond reproach, but maybe it's a little stale outside that core. Is that a fair thing to wonder, and how do you fix that?
Well, I mean, you would have a better, perhaps, feel on that, being around the team, all 82 games in each day, or certainly around the conversation of it, Mark, last year. For me, that's all part of the analysis and talking to the coaching staff, the people around the coaching staff, the players themselves, and trying to uncover that here in the next couple of weeks before talks really start to heat up. Leading into the draft and into free agency. So, it'd be unfair for me to say right now whether I think that's true or not. I think every team, regardless of what happens year to year, there always needs to be some sort of shock to the system that can continue to prod it along. And so, in theory, I would say that I agree that that in some fashion, as long as it's improving the team in a way that is well thought out and has a strong process, I don't think sending a shock into the group is necessarily a bad thing, but it has to be done smartly and after a lot of discussion, especially for somebody like me who's coming into a situation after 9 years elsewhere.
We talk about speed and skill all the time in Pittsburgh, and rightly so. That's what the team's based on. Is the team big enough, though? I wonder, looking at the teams in the final, if the game isn't swinging a bit toward heavy at this point.
Well, I think in the playoffs, I mean, when I think back of the Pittsburgh championship teams, I try not to focus. I mean, if you have a guy that's really good and really competitive and really big, they're really scarce. And so
that's for sure.
The way that I, when I think back to those teams in 2016 and 17, I think there were a lot of the same questions. What I really admired about the groups, Denmark, was their personality and, how competitive they were. They weren't going to necessarily win every single fight, but they were really competitive. And, guys like Kunitz and Hornquist and others that sort of added, that level of competitiveness and grit, personality, whatever you want to term it as. So I think that's one of the areas that we'll focus on. If the players, of course, if you can execute that while being a bit bigger, that's just a natural advantage in a game that's played in close confines, especially in the playoffs, where it's really hard to win pucks off the wall, really hard to get to the middle of the ice, really hard to get to the net. If you're really competitive, you're going to find a way to get there. If you're bigger, you're going to have an added advantage. So All those things are important, but I think if it's picking someone that's bigger or picking someone that has a really competitive personality, I would tend to give the advantage to the competitor, regardless of their size. But if all else is equal, you're going to go with the bigger person for sure, I think.
Is bottom six the biggest concern? Just looking at the roster, that's certainly what we talk about when we evaluate it after the season here on the show.
Well, I think perhaps the contributions from them is a focus. Definitely. But I think in terms of my view of it, Mark, I would want to continue to take my time and go through it and identify how do we want to use the third or fourth line or the bottom defense pair. What types of minutes are we looking to get from them? It's obviously a huge bonus every single time when your depth of your group can provide you goals and score. But there's always some sort of a trade-off there in some regards. But I think for me, it's taking the next stretch of time here, continuing to learn more and more about that, and then kind of guide how we want to go through the off season and into the summer. But I think that it's all of it is always a concern for me because you're going to have injuries, you're going to have different bouts of ineffectiveness, and the deeper the team can be, both in Pittsburgh and in Wilkes-Barre Scranton, we're going to it's going to benefit the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it's trying to build all that out as deeply as we can. Try to add more younger players to the organization in any ways we can to sort of push that ahead, whether that's in the American League or at the NHL level, and give that forward group a boost. And the same really applies on defense as well. Before we wrap, Kyle, I got to ask, do you still watch wrestling? I don't. I worked in it, but it wore me out. I'm done. How about you? I have not been able to in a very, very long time. I mean, I've watched the key events, or I've watched the key. I think the last thing I watched, frankly, was WrestleMania this year. I don't think I've seen many episodes of either entity's weekly programming, but there's been a lot going on. So maybe as we get through the summer, we'll get locked back in on the goings-on in professional wrestling. Maybe get the roster set first. Kyle, I feel like this is a good thing. Welcome to Pittsburgh. Thanks for taking the time, and I hope we talk again soon. Okay, thanks, Mark. Talk to you soon. That's Kyle Dubas, president of Hockey Ops with the Penguins. Thanks to him for joining me. Thanks to Jen Bolano, of course, for setting it up. I have a good feeling about this.